What's up everyone, welcome to Heroes Avenue. My name is Darian and today we're talking about more of the Snyder Cut, but it's coming from a comic book writer. And this is coming from Gail Simone. So what we're going to do today, we're going to go ahead and read her thread. She has written a really wonderful Twitter thread of the Snyder Cut and what it means to her and her, I guess her history behind DC and how she fell in love with it and how she got into the comic book industry because of the Justice League comic book that she found as a kid. It's a really humbling story that I would love to share with you guys. And this is all because obviously the movie is coming out on Thursday and everyone's talking about it. We were talking about it as well. We had the early screening on Monday, and then we had the early screening on Saturday. That's when me and Rob watched it, and so everyone's talking about the Snyder Cut this week, and so I would love to read Gail Simone, her story behind the Justice League story. And Gail Simone, she's written Justice League, Batgirl. She's famous for Batgirl. She's also she also wrote Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman. And yeah, she's been around for the longest time. I think she also she didn't do Batwoman. That's someone else. But yeah, she's a great writer. And so if you read DC Comics and you don't know who Gail Simone is, well, you didn't do your homework. So let me go ahead and read you her tweet here, and it starts off like this. Okay, let me tell you about the JLA. There won't be any Snyder Cut spoilers. This is about the concept. When I was a kid, I lived on a farm and we were poor. All I wanted to do was read. So I read everything I could find, but I read a lot I didn't love because it was there. My mom took me to a garage sale. There was a little stack of comics being sold for almost nothing. I saw an older comic and I just couldn't look away. I begged to get it. I didn't know who the characters were. It was this comic. And then it shows the JLA comic book run. It's a very old one. Super old. She says, I fell in love with comics that same night. I read that comic and then told a number of times, I'm ashamed to say I cut out some of the art and put it on my wall. I had to know who all the characters were, so I made little note cards to add information as I learned about them. I didn't know anything about comics. It was an older comic, and it had been someone's collection, and it was the first part of the continued story. So I rode my bike every day to the drugstore in a little town many miles from home to see if they got the next chapter. I didn't know. I thought you just went to the store and asked for the next bit of the story because, as you know, you get one issue a month, or if you're lucky, twice a month. And she continues and says, anyway, that comic was my Pokemon, my Star Wars, and it made me a comic fan forever. It was a big team-up issue, tons of characters, and I had to know them all. I feel like we've all been there, right? So for me, the comic has always been JLA. I never got over it. It was always the comic I had to check out, even as I grew up, went to college, and got married. It was always JLA. One of the things I loved how epic the characters were. The Marvel style, I grew to love that later, but as a kid, I didn't like to see my heroes squabbling all the time. I had enough of that in my real life. My heroes were Superman, Batman, Flash, and yes, Wonder Woman. When I was in college, we were poor again, and it was often choice between necessities and comics. I would usually choose comics. To this day, I am more starstruck meeting JLA creators than movie stars. We'll probably never grow out of that. Flash forward 2 years later, I end up a comic writer at DC, which is already an impossible dream. One day, very early in my career, the editor-in-chief at the time, Mike Carlin, calls me and asks if I would like to write 6 issues of Justice League. I could barely speak. I got through the conversation and finally remembered to ask, okay, who is going to draw this? And Mike said, how do you feel about Jose Garcia Lopez? And I absolutely lost it. I had two favorite artists in the world, and Jose was one of them. Jose Garcia Lopez is a god of comic art. He's the artist other artists get tongue-tied even talking about. And he was going to draw my story, my JLA story. I've written a lot of comics since then, and I'm very proud of almost all of them. But my favorite artist of my favorite book from my favorite company. Let me read that sentence again. But my favorite artist on my favorite book for my favorite company with my favorite characters. If I never wrote another comic after that, I would still think I was the luckiest fan alive. It turned out so beautiful. It's still a comic I just reread just to look at the art. And Jose was lovely, and I got to write Wonder Woman fighting Flash to save his life, and John creating bio armor, and well, I was very, very happy. Here's another cover to that story. Jose Garcia Lopez, There's No One Better. Yes. Years later, I got to write an episode of my favorite superhero animated series ever, Justice League Unlimited. It still felt like a direct line to that crumpled comic I found at that garage sale as a kid. I was so happy. All of this is just to say something that may seem a little silly to some people, but not to me. Justice League was the moment that changed my life for the better, and it made childhood bearable and adulthood a joy. I take JLA seriously, which a lot of us in this channel do. I know that for a lot of people, maybe most people, the Avengers is hipper and all that. I do love those movies, but the JLA felt like the heroes I wanted most in the world. Flash forward again to the theatrical cut, the Justice League. I liked it, I didn't hate it, but it didn't feel like the JLA to me despite incredible casting. It was entertaining and frustrating, but it felt like a shadow, like something the JLA really never was. Last night I was excited, but cautiously so, to see the Zack Snyder's version. I haven't kept up with most of the drama, I just didn't want my vision of the JLA to be mixed up in all that. I got a preview invitation, my family gathered, we were making a night of it. I could relate. As many of you know, Microsoft had a massive outage, which completely sucks. I feel like this movie cannot catch a break. Anyways, and the film that we scheduled to watch at 3 o'clock didn't start for us until after 11 p.m. I'm assuming. I was tired from deadlines and it felt like kind of a bad omen. We figured we would watch the movie an hour and see the rest the next day. 10 minutes in and we were so hooked that wasn't even an option. We watched the whole thing until 3 a.m. and truthfully, all I've been thinking about since is watching it again. It is a different take on the JLA. It is not the perfect gods and goddesses that are often portrayed as. That is a good thing. Every character has an arc. Some stuff that didn't work out in the other cut comes out as the best part of the full version. Sorry, that's my laptop. Got an email. It has heart and scope, and it's beautiful to look at and often achingly bittersweet at times. But it is not dour, it is not cynical. I don't want to say any more specifics, but I loved it. It feels finally like the other side of the coin to the Marvel films in a good way. I love that line so much. I feel like she describes that perfectly. I feel like, I mean, as good as the Marvel movies are, the Snydercut is the complete opposite and provides us a different scope of what this genre of comic book films can bring to the screen. I mean, we've seen different kinds of tones and different kinds of genres or different genre takes in this comic book world, but I feel like the DC nails what Marvel is, I feel like DC nails the opposite of what Marvel is, and that's exactly what defines DC, right? It's not Marvel. DC has its own way of doing things. Marvel has their own way of doing things, and I feel like, yeah, she describes it perfectly well. The other side of the coin to the Marvel films. I love that line so much. Anyways, she continues and says, "There's a lot I want to talk about. I have a million thoughts on it, but my advice is put aside all the internet nonsense and watch it with an open mind. A lot that I was nervous about was simply obliterated by the finished produce." I think she meant product. That's a good thing. Like I said, the JLA is the biggest thing in comics to me and always has been. And like every kid in the pre-MCU era, I could only imagine a great film based on my favorite comic ever coming to be. Well, it did. It came to be. This JLA is a believer. That's it. See it and make up your own mind, but try not to let all this irrelevant baggage cloud your enjoyment. It's so exceeded my expectations, and I know I won't be alone at that. I want to talk about it so bad. But for now, thumbs up, thumbs way up. I know a bunch of people are going to bring nonsense to discussion of this movie. Don't let them ruin it for you. That's it. Thank you for listening. I'm very happy. Hope you will be too. Love to all the JLA fans and also the people who made this movie. Oh, and finally, the Amazons. So I totally love, this thread that Gail allowed to tell. I feel like it's very humbling. I feel like, I completely agree where she's coming from. I mean, a lot of us, we all have this story of how much DC means to us and how we were brought into this world. And, a lot of us came from the comic books. A lot of us came from our family reading comic books and kind of passing it down. That's kind of where I'm from. And a lot of us came from just watching the animated shows on TV, and that's where your love started. And a lot of us came from the movies. And it doesn't matter how you got here. It doesn't matter that you're here, and the passion that you have for these films. And yeah, I love Gail Simone. She is so raw. She is so honest. And she just wants to see good things. She just wants to see a good story be told. And so I'm glad I was able to share this. Rob is the one that actually told me about her story, and I am totally satisfied that I was able to read this for you guys. And so I know there's a lot of other comic book artists or comic book writers out there that are just kind of telling their story about how much Justice League means to them. But if you want, tell me your story of how Justice League means to you, the Justice League story and the characters, how they mean to you, and how were you brought into this comic book world, and who was the character that brought you into it, which medium of comic book character got you sucked into this world we live in. I would love to know. And if there's anyone else that you guys would like me to read their story, that's like a legend comic book writer, I would love to read it. So let me know in the comments below. Like this video, subscribe to our channel. I'll see you guys again. Bye.